Hello, welcome to the Spectre of Anti-Blackness with me, your host, Owen. And this is the beginning of our first mini-series, which I will be calling Black is the New Black. Alright, so I've tried recording this episode 2 times already, and I'm reaching this point where it's kind of frustrating because, now I have to actually get to like the meat and potatoes of the podcast, which it feels like you can't really have that same loose feel as the first 2 episodes did, because I'm trying to make these concise points. Like this episode is about Miles Morales, the Spider-Man game, right? And I've written stuff about it before, like when I first played the game and I beat it the first time. I like wrote down my initial thoughts about it, but I'm not really. I hate going off of scripts because it's just I don't flow as naturally, and I things just don't, it doesn't sound as good, I don't think. Like listening back to, I have 2 different versions of this, one where I read over the notes kind of, and then one where I was just kind of spitballing what I could remember because I couldn't find the notes the first time. And I like the first one better, but at the same time I don't feel like, I don't still have all the same concise points, and it feels a lot more all over the place. So it's just a little preamble to say I don't really know what the style of the series is going to be just yet. But on this third take, I'm going to try to I'll have the notes up. I'm not going to like read over them though. What I'm going to do is just like, have just different like bullet points that I'm going to try to address here and there to try and complete, to paint the complete picture that I'm trying to paint here. So without further ado, let's get into the segment, the episode for today. Today we are talking about Insomniac's Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. Game that came out a little over a year ago now. And as far as I know, I haven't heard anything otherwise, but most people enjoyed it. People liked it. I haven't really read reviews or anything like that, but I didn't hear any outlash about the game. The little that I've heard about it, people seem to enjoy it. So I feel like a crazy person, but I don't like this game for a myriad of different reasons that we're going to get into. So my experience with the game thus far, I've beaten it twice. I beat it just, I do like this hardest difficulty run or whatever that I always do with games. So I beat it on one run through, and then I did it again on like New Game Plus, because I also am like an achievement hunter. So I have all the achievements for the game except for 2. One is for I think it's like 25 ceiling takedowns, and the other one is maybe 50 wall takedowns or something like that. And of course the platinum trophy. But aside from that, I've completely 100% of the game. Everything there is to collect, every outfit there is to get, every mission there is to do, I've done it all. And on the hardest difficulty the game has to offer. I played through most of it on my PS4. I only just recently got the PS5 like a week or 2 ago. So I finished it out on my PS5, but it was kind of just like doing like little side missions and such. I haven't played through any like the main story on my PS5 at all, and seriously doubt that I'm going to, because that story was honestly so hard to get through the second time. But I'll get to that. First, what I want to do is list the different things that I'll be talking about with the game, and then I'll bring it all together in the end. The first thing that I'm going to be talking about is just the gameplay, like initial thoughts about it. and then I'm gonna get into like the characters and the story, and there will be spoilers there, so warning here for this game for spoilers, and also for the last Spider-Man game that Insomniac made, the first one. That may also get spoiled a little bit. But yeah. And then at the end, I suppose we'll kind of just like circle back and wrap things up, like implications and maybe what I would have liked to see, what I would have liked to. Why can't I say this sentence? What I would have liked to see from the game. And whatever else may come up, we'll see. So yeah, this game released in November of 2020, right? Yeah, it's a little over a year old now, a year and some change. I believe the initial price point was $60, if I'm not mistaken. It's now selling for, I think, just 50. And I got it for maybe 20 or 30. And the price here is very important. If you're a person who knows video games, almost, every AAA title is releasing for $60, $59.99. They're now trying to do a push for 70, but that's beside the point, obviously. But yeah, a full AAA game is going to release for $60. And whether or not that is good isn't really the topic here. You have like these huge, expansive, like 30+ hour games like The Last of Us Part 2, $60, right? And then you have like, a dumpster fire, just retread of last year's game with a new coat of graphics on it. Like, I don't know, take your latest fucking Madden or Call of Duty. And I can't really say that because I haven't played any of those games in a while, but when I played them, that's what they were. I can't really speak on the new ones. But still, $60, right? That's just the standard for a AAA title release. But Miles Morales Spider-Man is not really a full game. It's more than DLC. The first Spider-Man game had DLC. But it's less than a spinoff, I'm going to say. The game is like 6 to 8 hours long. I'm pretty sure I beat it somewhere in that time. So I'd be pissed if I paid $60 for this game, or even 50, even 40. 30's even still pushing it. But when we get into 30, it's not because of the length of the game, it's just because of my experience personally. But, we'll get to that in a little bit. I do not feel as though the game should have released as $60. Not at all. That kind of adds a little bit to my frustration. Because it feels like, yeah, let's just slap a $60 price tag on it. It's, it's got a new character. He's black. People are going to buy it, whatever. And maybe that wasn't their rationale. Maybe I'm being cynical. But let's just, let's now get into the game itself. This game, if I could describe my experience with it in one word, it would be frustrating. I was extremely frustrated with this game on my first playthrough. I might even go as far as to say it's one of the most frustrating games that I've played in recent memory. Maybe like that I can think of just like right now off the top of my head. Absolutely, this game is the most frustrating. And I like The Last of Us Part 2. That game was frustrating, but in a different way. But again, this isn't about that. We're talking about Spider-Man here. And again, piling on the frustration is the fact that it released for such a high price, and that no one really seemed to take much issue with it. People bought it, people played it, people liked it. And I feel like it's setting a precedent here, and I don't like the precedent because of how I feel about the game. Which has to do with not only like the release of the game, but also like the actual story beats and like the gameplay and all that. Which let's get into now. first part being the game and its release. Okay. Now, I don't know if this is going to be the same on the PS5. I didn't see it on the 3 hours I put in on the PS5. I have 30 hours, perhaps a little bit more, on the PS4. The game is noticeably buggier than the original game was, which I thought was very strange, because it's like, it's a much smaller game, and it's like, it's the same map from the last one. It just feels like it's not polished. Like, none of the games are game breaking, mind you. But it'd be something like, I was doing one of the missions on the street, like a little side mission. The criminals are stealing a car. I gotta stop them. Then the other ones arrive in like a white van. I'm fighting them. This big thug guy gets out. I hit him. He flies like into the van, like he's stuck in the van, and I can't hit him, but he can hit me. Like, just really minor annoying bugs that popped up. There's maybe like 3 or 4 of them that would come up, and it happened just enough to where it was like, this whole game just feels buggy and annoying. There's also my brother. I didn't experience this, but he experienced bugs when he was like swinging, like if he'd go through a tree or something like that. But anyway, I didn't experience a single bug in the original game, which kind of contributes to this idea that I have around the game, where it feels like they were kind of just, it feels like the most egregious example of like the people are gonna buy it because he's black. It's just a cash grab. They didn't put as much heart into this game as they did the first one. Miles Morales had an excellent Spider-Man movie recently, the best one if you ask me. And I saw No Way Home. I still think Into the Spider-Verse is hands down the best Spider-Man movie. And they saw that and they're like, oh shit, people enjoy Black Spider-Man? Okay, well, we just made a Spider-Man game. Let's make him black. People are gonna buy that, and people did. But it really, like, it feels tacked on, and messy and rushed and unfinished. And honestly, it makes me a little worried for future games. Maybe we will have, maybe it'll set a good precedent. Like, since more black stories are going to be getting told, execs are going to be like, hey, maybe we need to get black people telling these stories. I hope that's where things lead. In which case, this part is kind of like a moot point, I guess. But it could also go the other way, where it's just going to be, that thing that I really dislike, where it's just the same generic, boring stories, if not worse, just with black faces. So yeah, that's the cover. That's without even getting into the game itself, which unfortunately, things don't get better once we actually get into the nitty-gritty here, the characters, the story, etc. So let's take some time to do that now. I will talk about the comics a little, but only a little, because it doesn't really matter too much here. It's its own adaptation. They're allowed to take whatever liberties they want. I don't care about that. I don't care about how faithful it is to the comic books. Some of the choices that they made, though, don't make sense to me, or are just flat out like, I guess it still counts as don't make sense to me, but some of them are like, really, I feel like, God, why'd you have to do that? Like, aging Miles up, I feel like was fine. I mean, I don't know. I would have preferred for him to be, I think in the comics he's like, starts as maybe 13 or 14. And it's this juxtaposition to Peter, who usually starts around like, he's in high school or whatever. And I think it's cool to have this younger, less experienced Spider-Man who has to learn from Pete. I think it's cool, and I like that. I don't know, the Miles in this game is just boring, and After a while, his voice is really annoying, but that's beside the point. Um, as a character, he's very bland and he makes the most ridiculous decisions. They're terrible. I'm telling you, it just it's it's dumb. But first, let me talk a little bit about the things I liked in the game because there are some things that I liked. When I first started the game, I actually had high hopes. Um, Uncle Aaron learns very early in the game that Miles is Spider-Man, and they become like buddies. Like the Prowler and Spider-Man actually work together for a little bit, and I thought that was fucking neat as hell. I was like, oh shit, like yeah, I'm down for this. This is cool. Um, felt kind of nuanced, you know. Um, and then I'm like, oh, is there like a black love interest? Like, okay, they're gonna give him a whole girlfriend. Like this, I like where this game is going. Um, I thought the villain was pretty obvious from the beginning. The Roxxon guy, I don't remember his name. He's like he's a Elon Musk type. But it was like right when he came up, right when I saw the name of Roxxon on like, I think he's swinging through the city and like there's a billboard and I'm like, oh, okay, these are the villains. Um, so the story there is very like generic and cookie cutter. Um, but I was fine with that. You know, I wasn't really asking for much there. But then they start attacking me personally, and this is where the frustration really begins for me. Now, there's also one more part that I like though. Um, there's a part where Miles has just moved to Harlem, and he's frustrated because he's like, hey, I'm fucking like I'm in this new place, and I don't know anyone. I don't know where anything is. I gotta ask for directions. It sucks. And the girl, she's like, well, why don't you go to like a barbershop or go shoot some hoops? Go play some basketball and you know, fucking figure things out that way, which I thought was kind of neat because it's like, yeah, get involved in the community. That's cool. Um, that was fine. Those are a few things that I enjoyed. I enjoyed like playing as Miles, like when he's swinging and fighting. I like the subtle differences between his style and Peter's style, and also like his powers. Very cool in the game. You can really just wipe people out with him. It's very cool to play as Miles. But before I move further, because we're going to start talking about like, well, most of it's about black stuff anyway, so maybe I should have addressed this earlier since we're already close to 20 minutes in. But, Owen, you may ask, uh, why, it can just be a game, right? It doesn't have to talk about his blackness, right? Like, like Soul doesn't really talk about the main character's blackness. This doesn't have to talk about his blackness. And I hear you. But clearly the game is trying to say something. Okay? Clearly they have a message and they're really trying to shove it in your face, but they don't have much to say, and it's very strange. The game has a Black Lives Matter suit. Okay? And when you get the suit, the game takes the screenshot in front of a Black Lives Matters mural. When you play a PlayStation game and you get an achievement, the system will automatically take a screenshot. So when you go back and look at the trophy, you can see when you got it. And on the PS5 now, it also takes a 14-minute video, which I think is pretty cool. But tangent. Anyway, the camera angles down. It shows him in his Black Lives Matter suit in front of this Black Lives Matters mural, and it's like, okay, like clearly you're saying something here, right? You're trying to say something. And then you also have, this happens multiple times, I'm pretty sure, and one time at the end where it's like really egregious, but you always have these black characters who's like, oh, he's our Spider-Man, yeah, he's our Spider-Man. Um, and that's pretty much it. There's not any actual like significant characterization of him being black though, which is strange. I mean, they have him like wear Timbs and he's got like a fur-lined coat and he listens to this really like generic G-rated hip hop. I guess that's, I don't know. They're like, hey, it feels like what a studio exec might think a black kid listens to. I don't know. It sounds really cheesy and goofy. But anyway, that's it. And like, I don't know. It feels showy, but there's no substance to it. And I feel like it's really a missed opportunity because Miles Morales is such an interesting character. Um, he's got he's got a black dad and a Hispanic mom, and his dad is also a cop. And in this particular iteration that Insomniac did, his dad has died. He died in the first game. Um, and I thought that perhaps in this game there might be like a point in time where he comes to like a confrontation with the police where he maybe starts to like see them a little bit differently, or I don't know, maybe he gets like racially profiled or something. Um, and that actually gets explored perhaps since we want to put BLM suits and posters and shit, and we moved him down to Harlem because it's where the black people are, and all this shit. I don't fucking know, but that doesn't happen. There is one part though in one of the early missions where a bridge explodes and he's saving the people on the bridge, and Roxxon that I mentioned earlier, the evil guys, they show up and they're in like these militaristic, futuristic red suits, and they got these big ass fucking guns and stuff. They're faceless. They got like these masks, and they corner him and they're about to shoot him, and he's like, "I just saved these people, and they're gonna kill him anyway." And it kind of like reads as like a police brutality kind of moment, um, but it falls very flat in my opinion because it's this faceless, nameless, fake corporation. It's not the police, right? And he pretty much forgets about it right after it happens. He like makes one little remark to his friend later, and like that's it, and it never really comes up again. And the police in this game, as you would expect, they are fine. They're like 100% good. Like nothing ever happens with them. Um, but whatever, I guess. I think one of the last things I want to say about Miles is I mentioned earlier that he makes dumb decisions, but I didn't really mention what like some of those decisions were. One of the really egregious ones I'm going to talk about next when I bring up kind of my main point of the story. This was the most frustrating part for me actually, and that is I guess our secondary antagonist. I don't know if she would be considered an antagonist. Like she acts antagonistic for most of the story, but then she kind of flips the switch at the end, kind of like not quite like Zuko. But I think there's a name for this kind of character, and I can't remember what it is. So anyway, maybe I'm thinking of another word. I don't know. But regardless, uh, Finn Mason. Uh, man, Finn. Okay, so this is where we talk about the comic books a little bit. In the comics, Phineas Mason is a fucking old white man scientist dude, who was a villain, alias the Tinkerer. And Insomniac said, "Hey, what if instead of that, we turn Phineas, what was his Morpheus? What's his fucking last name? Phineas Miles? No, Phineas. Sorry, Phineas. Uh, Mason. Why don't we turn Phineas Mason into a little black girl? Miles' age, not like a tiny black girl, like teenager. We name her Finn. She's now Finn Mason. And she's the antagonist of the story. We tease her as the love interest in the beginning, and then we flip the script and she fucking dies at the end. You pretty much kill her, more or less. She goes crazy. She goes insane. She, stops listening to reason. Just makes dumb shit choices. Of course, so does Miles. But she just makes completely ridiculous choices and then dies. And then they kind of subtly implicate in like the last 3 hours as I'm zipping through the city after the story's over, that maybe Miles ends up getting with the deaf girl that he meets in the story, which I'm sure 90% of the people who play the game will have missed that. But again, it's not important because they do Finn so dirty. It pains me. It pains me so. Especially because Finn is such a very cool character concept on paper. She's like this hardened radicalist because her brother was killed working for the bad guy. He killed her. He killed him, her brother. So, she gets radicalized and she's trying to take him out in his company. I think that's fucking cool as hell, Radical, yeah. Against the system, I feel you, girl. Like, hell yeah. That's like, yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there. Um, but the way the story has to progress, like, it's kind of reminiscent of something that I heard in a video essay about Game of Thrones once. How, like, they wrote this, essentially this scenario where things should have very easily just played out the opposite way of the way they wanted it to. So they basically just, like, fucking forced the puzzle pieces to fit and made the story go where they wanted it to go. And everyone has to be a complete idiot for it to happen that way. I will now address some of those story points that I've been dancing around for the past 30 minutes. So fucking discount Elon Musk is building he's got a great big tower that he's working on, and he's got this energy converter at the bottom of it, which is giving people bad cancer and shit or whatever. And his battery to power it, she turned into a bomb, and she's gonna try and blow up his building. Because she wants to take him down and his company down. Okay, that's the premise that we're working with here. Spider-Man is saying, no, it's not a good idea. We gotta find another way. She's upset at him because he did not tell her about that he was Spider-Man, and he didn't. Oh no, and he lied to get into her group called the Underground. So let's address those two beats first before getting into the story and her beats as well. Okay. So Miles finds out that Finn is the Tinkerer before she finds out that he's Spider-Man. And then he uses her to try and infiltrate the Underground group. First, his initial thought was like, okay, maybe I should just tell her I'm Spider-Man, which obviously that's the right thing to do. Duh, you do that, of course. Why wouldn't you? But his uncle convinces him otherwise for some reason. Whatever. Says, lie to her, get into the group, try to take down the group, find out what you need to do, or whatever. I don't really remember the story beat at this point. And so he does that, and she later finds out that, like, oh, you're actually Spider-Man, because they fight, and she almost kills him. She's way fucking powered in this game. It's ridiculous. But anyway, then he takes off his mask, and she's, like, mad at him for the rest of the movie, because he's the last person close to her, because her parents are dead, and her brother who took care of her is dead. I don't know if she's homeless or what the fuck's going on there, because they're only, like, 17 or something, I don't know. But anyway, so she turns her back on him and then doesn't listen to him anymore, and that's this whole thing. We'll get to that. It's really just stupid to keep lying to her like he does instead of just coming clean, just like she came clean. She's like, okay, yeah, you found out I'm the Tinkerer, so what's your secret? Because I know you're hiding something too. And he just doesn't tell her. It's a perfect opportunity to, and he doesn't. And just because it's a dumb decision doesn't mean it's a bad story, because, characters make dumb decisions all the time, and I understand that's just, that's how a story goes sometimes. But again, like, there's no payoff here. Like, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. His reasoning he says for him not telling her that he's Spider-Man is because Peter told him to never reveal his identity. He says this to his friend Genki, which that's the first and last time I'm gonna say his name because I hate it. I'm pretty sure he's a comic book character and they didn't make that up. But still, if that was my friend's name, I'm sorry, I'm not calling you that, bro. I might call you Gank or something or G, but and especially how the voice actor says it, and he's like swinging around and shit. His voice is just so high pitched and whiny. It's very. Anyway, I'm sorry. This is another tangent. Um, but he says to his friend that I can't tell her because Pete told me not to tell anyone. And he's like, you fucking told me, dude. And he also tells his mom, and by the end of the story, pretty much like fucking half of Harlem knows. So it's a bad reason, and I don't like it. Um, and there's also this point in the story. So they both get captured because he chose to meet up with her, and then his uncle goes behind his back and tells Roxanne about the meetup, and then they get ambushed and captured, and she blames him for it again because people don't know how to communicate in this game. That's more of just like a frustration I have with stories in general, not just this one in particular, where it's like, oh, in order for this story to have to happen, everyone has to like fucking be an idiot and fucking like not listen and not communicate properly. It's annoying. Things can happen with people communicating properly. But anyway, um, they're in the secret dungeon Roxanne place, and they find this computer that has like all this fucking information on the bad guy and the company and pretty much everything they need to properly take down the quote unquote properly take down the company and the guy um, legally or whatever. Whether it would actually work or not, I guess, is beside the point. Um, but she refuses to listen to this and attacks him, and then they go their separate ways, and you're on the road to kill her at that point. But it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, why add this perfect way for them to solve the problem and then they just never use it? Even after her plan doesn't work, they don't use it. He gets caught because Aaron, fucking Prowler, tells on him. Like, the documents don't factor into it ever again. And it's like, why have them in the story? I don't get it. Don't put the vital information on the computer. Don't even have that part in the story. Um, it just makes it like a less compelling story that way. So she thinks, yes, I'm going to blow up this building and that will accomplish something, I guess. I don't really know what her idea is. And the guy literally says while they're fighting, which, of course, sure, maybe it's too late at that point, but he's like, yeah, you blow this building up, it's going to help us because it's considered a terrorist attack, and, we're going to get good monies and stuff like that. Like, it's dumb, man. It's dumb. And, she just doesn't care because they turned her into an absolute maniac who refuses to listen to reason, and I feel like they just really did her dirty. She just, she frustrates me. Her angle in the story is just weak. That's what I have to say about it. And everyone's just too dumb to really do anything about it because they have this story they want to tell for whatever reason, and they tell it, but it feels like a weak story. I feel like they could have did better with it. I haven't sat down like very um haven't sat down and like very crucially thought about this, like, came up with my own story beats or anything like that. But I'm sure I could. Anyway, yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, Miles and Finn are teased to have like this budding relationship in the beginning, which I thought was really cute and I thought would have been a great story beat. And maybe it would have even made more sense if they got together and she turned into a villain then. That would have been kind of crazy. Like, oh, the villain's my girlfriend? That'd be wild. Um, But that doesn't happen, and yeah, I don't know. It turns into like a family thing halfway through, which I don't understand. She's like, "Oh, you were like a brother to me," and he's like, "Oh, we're family," and this weird thing. But I don't know. It's clearly I personally feel like it was clearly implied earlier that it was more than that. I think that's pretty much everything that I have to say about the game that I can think of, and that I kind of saw skimming through the notes there. Um, Last thing I'll say is that one of the big things that frustrates me about the game is that the first one was so good. It was very fun. The story was awesome. Everything that I'm bringing up here that I'm frustrated with, I just did not experience in the first game, which tells me Insomniac can make a good Spider-Man game, and they just didn't. I don't know if the same people were working on this one. They were released pretty close to each other. I don't know. I mean, it's why this is why it's in that category of fucking same generic boring story but with just a black face. That's This is part and parcel. Like this is the thing. This is it. Um, and yet no one seems to care. People fucking eating this shit up. Um, and I'm worried that more studios, whether that's in games or movies or whatever, are gonna just follow suit and just slap a black face on their 3D uh, polygon creatures and, fucking let that be the moneymaker instead of good storytelling. Or even, black storytelling. Good black storytelling. All of that. I, for one, I'm mad that I even spent the $20 or $30 that I did on this game. I wish I could refund it. It's 40 hours of my life I won't be getting back. But hopefully it gave 40 minutes of some interesting ideas for other people to hear and kind of, get something out of. Because I'm deleting this game off my system. And, one thing I didn't talk about was, it doesn't really matter now since I'm pretty much done, but I feel like I do want to say it. God, this game does not have skippable cutscenes, and it sucks. The first time through, you don't know the story, so you're following along, you're trying to understand stuff. But going through the second time, holy shit, this story drags immensely. It's so bad. But yeah, I know that part of it was kind of out of place. If this was a paper I was writing, my English teacher would be very mad at me and say, that sentence doesn't belong there. Don't you know how paragraphs work? Or whatever. But I'm sorry, I forgot. I don't know how to go back and put it elsewhere, so it's fucking at the end here. I'm sorry. Anyway, that's it. That's our first review of a thing. So let me know if this is something that you liked or you didn't. And let's I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a good rest of your week, of your month, of your year. And I hope nothing gets stuck in your eye today. I hope you have eyes clear of debris. Anyway, yeah, I'll see you guys.